The first time I realized how quickly campfire cooking could go south, it started with a marshmallow. I'd been bragging all evening about my perfect golden brown technique. Just a slow turn, steady heat, patience, I told everyone. But pride has a way of tripping a man up. The very first marshmallow of the night, I held it just a hair too close to the flames. Whoosh! Up it went like a torch blazing bright in the dark. I panicked, flailed it around trying to blow it out, and ended up slinging a fireball into the dirt. The others roared with laughter while I stood there, sticky sugar charred to the stick, my pride as scorched as the marshmallow. That set the tone for the night. My buddy Tom decided he could do better and held his own marshmallow way up high, far enough to roast, not burn. Trouble was, he forgot to turn it. By the time he checked it, the top half was raw and drooping, while the bottom was black as coal. He bit into it anyway, and I'll never forget the crunch it made, like biting into a lump of charcoal with a gooey center. Then came dinner, the main course. I was on soup duty. The plan was simple. A pot of broth, some noodles, maybe a few carrots and onions we'd packed in. Nothing fancy, but I'd gotten lazy with the fire, let it burn down too far, and when I tried to revive it with fresh wood, the smoke rolled straight into the pot. By the time the water boiled, it wasn't soup anymore, it was liquid campfire. I tried to convince the others it had a smoky flavor, like one of those fancy restaurants back in town. They didn't buy it. Tom took one sip and spit it into the dirt, claiming it tasted like burned socks soaked in creek water. Funny thing though, it didn't ruin the night. We still sat there, shivering a little in the cool air, passing around half-toasted marshmallows and laughing at each other's disasters. The stars were clear above, the fire snapped and popped, and despite the failed menu, we went to sleep with full stomachs from laughter, if not food. And that, I suppose, is what campfire cooking teaches you. It's not about the perfect meal, but the imperfect moments you remember years later. I'll never forget the night we tried to cook hot dogs on sticks and ended up with something more like flaming torches. It had been a long day of hiking, and our legs crackling and spitting fire. Instead of pulling it out, he panicked and tried blowing on it while still holding it over the flames. That didn't help, it just sprayed fiery grease around like a torch. By the time he yanked it free, all that was left was a charred husk dangling on the stick. Tom didn't fare much better. He thought he was clever, stacking 3 hot dogs on his stick so he could eat like a king. Only problem, he didn't balance them well. He gave the stick a little turn, and the whole lot slid off into the fire. For the next half hour, sparks and flames hissed every time a sausage popped open in the coals. We were all too hungry to let them go to waste though, so after the fire cooled, we fished a couple out with another stick. They were gritty with ash, but I swear they were still better than my smoked soup from the night before. Meanwhile, I thought I'd play it safe and cook mine slow, holding it high above the coals. Except the stick I used was green wood, and halfway through it split. My hot dog dropped straight into the dirt, rolled a bit, and picked up half the campsite before I caught it. I brushed it off as best I could, muttering about extra seasoning, but I'll admit, I crunched down on more grit than meat with every bite. When the disaster was over, we sat back, our bellies half full, and laughed until the stars blurred. Cooking by a campfire, we decided, is less about the food and more about the spectacle. Each bite carries a story, whether it's ash, smoke, or laughter flavored. And truth be told, those hot dogs, ruined as they were, tasted more like adventure than anything I've ever eaten in a kitchen. Now beans and bacon, those should have been foolproof, right? A cast iron skillet over a steady bed of coals, a little oil, and a few strips of bacon sizzling before we dumped in the beans. That was the plan. But as anyone who's cooked outdoors knows, plans don't always survive the fire. I'd lugged that skillet miles into camp, swearing it was worth the wait just for the meals it promised. When the bacon hit the pan, it started perfectly, crackling, the smell drifting into the trees, making our mouths water. We leaned close, grinning like wolves ready to pounce. But then came the grease. A little drizzle over the rim, blast of steam, the fire doubled back at us. We all jumped, coughing and waving smoke out of our eyes. By the time the skillet cooled enough to pull from the coals, the bacon was reduced to blackened ribbons, and the beans had the consistency of tar. But hunger makes fools of men. We tried scraping the top layer off, searching for a bite that wasn't pure charcoal. Every spoonful tasted like licking the inside of a chimney, but we forced it down between bursts of laughter. I can still see Tom fanning his tongue with his hand, swearing he'd rather chew tree bark than eat another mouthful. The skillet itself never quite recovered. No matter how many times I scrubbed it with sand and water, it carried that smoky tang. Some nights, years later, I'd cook something at home in it and swear I could still taste the ghost of those beans. Funny how failure can leave a flavor all its own. Ah, dessert. The one part of camp cooking everyone looks forward to. The grand finale. Trouble is, it's also where some of the worst disasters seem to happen. Take cobbler, for instance. I'd heard folks swear by the trick. Dump a can of pie filling in the Dutch oven, sprinkle cake mix on top, maybe add a splash of soda, and let the coals do the rest. Easy as pie, they said. Only ours wasn't pie. It was a molten swamp of half-burned cake mix and bubbling cherry filling that oozed out the sides like lava. We'd underestimated how many coals to pile on top. The bottom scorched to a black crust. The top was still powder, and the middle was a sticky mess that clung to the spoon like tar. We each took a bite, hopeful, but the burnt sugar stuck to our teeth and the cherries tasted like campfire smoke had seeped straight into the can. Tom spat his back into the dirt, declaring it the taste of regret. Then came the marshmallows, round 2. After the torch incident on the first night, you'd think I'd have learned, but no. This time I thought I'd get fancy. I jammed a marshmallow into a chocolate square and wrapped it with foil, planning to roast it like a gourmet treat. I must have left it too close to the coals, because when I opened the foil, it was a boiling, sticky bomb. The chocolate had melted into a scorching puddle, and the marshmallow had expanded like a balloon. When I tried to lift it out, the foil tore, and in the end, that was sweeter than any cobbler could have been. Looking back now, I realize those cooking disasters were the very heart of our trips. Sure, we went out there dreaming of golden marshmallows, hearty soups, and Dutch oven desserts worthy of a magazine cover. What we ended up with was charred, smoky, half raw, or simply inedible. But in a strange way, that was exactly what made it unforgettable. Every time a marshmallow burst into flames or a hot dog tumbled into the dirt, it added another story to our campfire lore. The skillet of beans that turned into a fireball, well, no one remembers the times we managed to cook bacon perfectly, but that night lives on in every retelling. The cobbler fiasco taught us that dessert requires patience, and the melted marshmallow bomb showed us to respect even the smallest flames. Each mishap carried its own lesson, often learned the hard way, but with enough humor to soften the edges. There's something humbling about food at camp. At home, you can just toss a mistake in the trash and start over. Out there, you eat what you can salvage, laugh at what you can't, and carry the memory with you long after the smoke clears. Even the worst meals taste better when shared with friends under the stars, when the night air is crisp and the fire's glow dances on everyone's faces. Hunger sharpens the edges, but laughter fills in the rest. These days I've gotten better with the skillet, more cautious with the marshmallows, and wiser with the Dutch oven. But if I'm being honest, part of me misses those disaster nights. They were messy, frustrating, and often downright hilarious, and they bonded us tighter than any perfect spread ever could. So if you find yourself out there, poking at a burned sausage or blowing on a singed marshmallow, don't be too quick to call it a failure. That's the stuff you'll remember. The taste of smoke, the sound of laughter, and the simple truth that the best seasoning of all is the company you keep.